It's not always like that. Actually, if you know your horse, sometimes I think the energy goes the other way and you just know in your gut, like, something's not right.
You know, when you understand the insides of a horse and how unbelievably complex it is, how long it is, how easily tangled up or affected, and how sensitive they are to that, you know, it makes a lot more sense in these moments. Hello everybody, and welcome back to This Equestrian Life. It feels really weird to say that. It's been so long.
I know. It's been a while. I had to like get my mic out of the drawer. It's been like sitting in there. Just as spring has sprung, we have returned like the lovely daffodils we are.
Literally, I was talking to YouTube about this because I've been YouTubing my whole farm life journey, and I realise that I'm moving the horses on Monday to the farm. Yeah.
So exciting.
It's so stressful. I literally have had a frontal lobe headache for like a fortnight, but you know what? It's going to be so totally worth it in the end, and it's just one of those situations where I know I just have to keep going through it to the other side, but it's fairly complex and stressful and messy. But the reason that this is cool is because it is actually the spring equinox when we are recording this on Friday, the 20th of March. So when you guys listen to this, the spring equinox will have happened. We are getting closer to, we're moving into the kind of the new year of life as such. And I really do think that if we were to live seasonally before the whatever this calendar is called that we live by, this would have actually probably been our new year.
Yeah, very potentially. I think you're right. And I kept reminding myself because I've been feeling very, very, very tired lately. We've actually been eating quite a lot less meat. And I don't know, correlation is not causation, but I do sometimes wonder whether it's just like an adjustment period or whether I'm just tired for other reasons because there's been a lot going on. But I was trying to remind myself of how this period before spring, it's okay not to feel like you've completely sprung.
Yes.
If that makes sense, you know?
100%. Definitely. I was talking to one of my clients about it the other day, and we were talking about how, now is when things are starting to come back to life and we're kind of stepping out of the dark and into the light. And it's okay if if the new year, January the 1st feels like the ickiest thing on earth, because naturally we were meant to be in hibernation at that point as such, looking after our homes and hunkering down and sleeping a lot and all of those things. Like, we are mammals at the end of the day. Are we mammals?
Yeah, we are
Yeah.
mammals.
Yeah. Yes, because
you and me, baby, ain't nothing but mammals, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm glad you didn't finish that song.
Do you know what's so funny is, I don't know if you can see this, you probably didn't catch that, but my response to Are We Mammals was to go straight to that song. Miri's response to Are We Mammals was to be like, yes, because our skeletons are something.
Well, I was going to say our skeletons aren't on the outside, like a insect. Their skeletons are on the outside, so that's one of the things that makes us not. Yeah, they're just like mush on the inside, aren't they?
That's horrific. Exoskeleton. Yeah,
Yeah,
no, that's not for me.
Anyway, I don't think that's what makes us our species. That's not makes us a species of mammal. But anyway, how's Harley Boy?
Harley Boy's so good. He's on such good form at the moment. Like, he's just such an angel. We did have a horrible couple of weeks actually. That, like, quite a few not great things happened in quick succession. So if you don't follow my Instagram, we went out competing. We've been going out and doing quests. It was so fun. And then we were like 10 minutes from home, and we'd just come off the motorway, and we were pulling onto a dual carriageway, and the lorry broke, as in like the clutch disappeared from under my foot and it wouldn't go in gear. And I was just stuck on this dual carriageway with traffic coming by. And like, the breakdown people were amazing, the police not as great, but passers-by were epic. And the point is, Harley just stood there with his hay. And I always take a lot of hay with me because we always have to travel on the M25 pretty much every time we go out. And I always have this vision in my head that we're going to get stuck in a crash one day. So I pack way more hay than we ever need. And I truly believe on that day that it was the fact that I could just keep giving him hay, that he was just like, I guess we're still traveling, you know?
Yeah. His needs were met, so he was cool.
He was so cool. So that happened. And then 2 days later, I don't want to say that he colicked because I'm not sure that it actually was colic and the vet wasn't 100% sure, but it was like colic like symptoms, I would say. So that happened. And then the weekend after that, he bolted with me through a wood because of a dog. And then the day after that, we nearly got hit by a car. It all just happened. But since then, we've been having a lovely time. And I think that says a lot about our regulation is that we're both just like, this is okay. These were a few bad moments, and now we're back to being cool and fun. And we've been doing some really fun stuff with the fly mask and our positive, which we'll get into. But he's been great.
I think
So,
it's just testament to your foundations is in those moments. And this is what I try and encourage people to have really well established with their horses is your foundations, your confidence jar is quite big actually. If you were to
mm,
use that as an
mm,
analogy, like the jar is big, so it's already got loads of coins in it. So even though you had this absolute shit show of a fortnight, you only really knocked out a certain amount of those coins rather than it being like, okay, well, there is no jar. So
yeah.
we're now at a zero. We're now at a negative number. Ralph is sitting next to me on the sofa, guys. So if you hear him go hoof, then that is why. But yeah, that's a really. I think it's always good. And you, I always say you're such a wonderful advocate for a horse because you have that relationship first, and that is what will have
Mm,
built that. And yeah, of course, having enough hay in those situations is very important because he was able to then regulate himself through the food that he was eating. But it would have been more than that. Give yourself a bit more credit that it wasn't just because he had enough hay, it was also because you have set him up incredibly well for the life that then you ask him to live. And that's what we all should do as horse people is think, how am I setting my horse up to live in the world I bring it into? Because they're not designed to go in horse boxes. They weren't designed to be chased by dog. Well, maybe actually the chased by dogs part, maybe they were designed to do because they would have just run away. But he did. He just ran away like a horse would do because he was
yeah.
surviving. So yeah, love that.
Yeah.
Not love that you had a hard
Yeah.
time, but love that it didn't destroy all of your hard work, basically.
No, it was, and I it did make me think about what I have in the lorry and what I didn't have, and I put together an emergency kit, and maybe we'll talk about that. But I'm quite curious because hearing you talk about the foundation, have there been any moments in the last like couple of years where things have happened with your horses where you've just been like, thank God that we did all of that foundational work for this moment? Because I feel like, yeah, I'd love to hear what have your shit moments been, so it's not just me.
Yeah, well, we have been existing on a 60-mile-an-hour road at the previous yard for the last six
Mm.
years, and I've had some really horrible experiences. And there was one not that long ago where there was a guy, there were four of us out hacking. I was riding Zora, and there was a guy in a van, and it was really weird. Like, if I had found out afterwards that that car had been like an unmanned car, that was how he behaved. He behaved like we weren't on the road. Like he just kept going at 60 miles an hour down this road towards us. And like I put myself in the road to protect the other horses. Zora's very, very good.
Were you on?
And
Oh, you were on Zora.
yeah. And so I waved, I had a flag in my hand, my Vizzy whip, which I think you might really like actually. This is like a little piece of fluorescent material that you attach to the end of a schooling whip. So you can literally put it
Oh.
out in front of people. That's not an advert, by the way. They are just a really cool bit of tech that I found at Beta, a couple of, not the one just gone the year before. Um, and they say like 10 miles an hour on them. They say pass wide and slow, but they're very obvious because you can kind of detach them from the horse and like put them in front of a person essentially. And
Mm.
so I waved this flag at him and nothing happened and he just kept going. And in the end I physically put myself in his way, so he had to stop. And like I banged on the window of the van because I was like, this guy needs to understand what is going on here. Like he was just completely, it was like he wasn't there. It was a really, really horrible experience that we took his
Did
number plate.
he?
Mm,
Did he like respond? Did he
no,
like? No.
no, nothing. It was really odd. I don't know if he maybe didn't speak English, which kind of was the feeling that I got. Like the way that when I was speaking to him, he was like, just, it was like he wasn't there. It was really, really
Mm.
strange. But it what I notice in those moments, going back to your question of do we have hard moments? Yes, we do. But what I find, because of all the groundwork, the tool work that we do, the understanding of regulation, the time that we spend in a regulated state, it then means that in those situations, my horse is just very quick to like drop back down again.
Yeah.
And they don't tend to have such big flight responses like Harley had, where he really ran
Mm,
away from the dog, for example. And I don't know how he
mm,
coped in the car situation, but I know that we've spoken about the fact that he finds that re-regulation quite hard, whereas
yeah.
Zora kind of was like a bit hot for maybe 20 yards, and then she was done because
Mm,
we have she has learnt that how to re-regulate herself in difficult situations that were created around her. So for example, we do things like we use a sound pressure, like a clapper, like one of those things that you have at a football match, while she's working over tarpaulin on the ground. And that's like extreme. So that's like level
like a
10,
police horse.
right? But the reality of that is she then learns in a very incremental way. Like I say, that's level 10. Level 1 is approach of a small flag touching your body, you moving while the small flag is touching your body. And for some horses, that is like World War Eight. I'm not going to say
Mm,
three because of the state of the world right now, but
mm.
we won't get into politics, guys. Don't worry, but we are aware and we are sad. So I think that's probably all we'll say.
Plus one.
And exactly. And so it's that re-regulation. You are never going to stop a horse from being able to have a flight instinct, and you shouldn't try to stop them. The way I train my horses, I don't want them to be numb to pressure, but I want them to understand how to re-regulate afterwards. And Rhi and I, we've been talking a lot, haven't we? And we've been having some like little groundwork things. And now that I
Mm,
have internet and I'm in my new house, I'm actually going to be able to do
yes.
some coaching again. It's funny actually. I started coaching again this week. I feel a bit sorry for the people that I coached because I've had this break of a whole month and it's like verbal diarrhea. I'm like, got so much to say to people. I'm like, but what we can do is this, and da 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 da. And then I'm like, okay, one bit of information at a time, Miriam. This person's brain has just like fallen out of their other ear that they're listening to. So, yeah, as I said, verbal diarrhea. But it's that we can help Harley more, basically,
Yeah.
so that then the peak isn't so high. So then the climb back down doesn't need to be so big, basically.
Yeah. It's so funny that you mentioned the starting to do groundwork with the tools and stuff because the day that we've never talked about this, you don't know this. The day that I realized he wasn't feeling good and I called the vet thinking like what's going on, I basically had arrived at the yard and his energy was just quite low. And I said to the girls who brought him in, I was like, was he okay coming in? They were like, yeah, he was fine. He was out in front, da da da. And I was like, okay. Sometimes they have a windy night in the field, or it's they've been running around a lot and then they get tired. And I was like, that's okay, that's fine. So I brought him out to do some groundwork, and I was like, oh, I'll bring a little. I had a stick with some like plastic on the end of it because I was like, oh, we'll just see like how he responds. And I took him into the school and I had my treats and stuff because I was also going to do some stuff completely loose and just see if I could get him to have a little play with me. And he was super
Because
disengaged.
yeah, we've spoken about that,
We'd
hadn't we?
spoken about this. Yeah, yeah. Go on, explain the treats thing, and then I'll go back to the.
So Rhi and I were talking about Harley because Rhi had gone to a show and Rhi was feeling quite frustrated because she keeps going to shows, but the same thing keeps happening. He's like 90% good, and then 10% or maybe less of the time, he's like blocks her inside leg. She can't get him around a corner because he's like, no, the devil is in the corner. So we
Mm,
were talking about how we can start to introduce the groundwork to help him understand how to go towards pressure. And we'd started doing some groundwork, and it was quite interesting because Harley was quite disengaged. It was like he was quite sort of turned off by the groundwork. He
mm,
was a bit like, ugh, this isn't making me feel better. I don't see the point. I don't want to do it. So I had suggested to Rhi to do some stuff completely loose in the arena and just see if she could get his connection to be there with him. So literally just moving with her, rewarding that, moving with her, rewarding that, to try and just bring up his level of like yeah, connection, responsiveness
Mm.
to you and your body rather than him feeling like, oh, this is a task and I don't like it. And yeah, so now this makes more sense now when you tell us the day of the slightly upset stomach.
Yeah, so this was the first time I was doing it, and Harley is like loves treats. He's not mouthy, but he's food orientated. So I started trying to get him to kind of follow me around, and he was completely disengaged. It was really odd. He was like at the gate, and he kept looking at me but not moving with me. And I tried to give him a couple of treats for moving a couple of steps, and he was like, I'm making a face of like he was just kind of like he'd take the treat, but it would be like a very slow sort of like when you try and feed a child Brussels sprouts, it was like that. And I was like,
Mm-hmm.
this is really weird. And then I was doing some stuff with the bag because I was like, okay, maybe he just doesn't want to do loose stuff today. I was like, let's just see some stuff with the bag. And he just like couldn't give less of a shit. And I was like, okay, I was like, what is going on? So after about 10 minutes, I was like, there's something, I can't put my finger on it, but something's not right. He's disengaged. He doesn't want to play. He doesn't care about the bag. I was like, it's a bit weird. So I came back onto the yard and I went over his whole body, went over his legs, front of his legs, back of his legs, neck, back, tummy. And that was the only place where he turned his head round and was like, that bit. And I was like, okay, maybe tummy. I was like, maybe I'm overthinking it. At this point, I was like, I don't know what's going on, but something's not right with my horse.
Mm-hmm.
And so I put him back in the stable and he starts going round and round and round. And Harley doesn't really lie down that often in his box. He tends to lie down in the field with the herd. And it was really weird because he would be like, when horses go to lie down and they're
Mm-hmm.
kind of
They're
like
like
finding the right spot, they're
folding
kind of
their legs
up
up
and
a bit.
down. And yeah,
Yeah.
he was doing that, but they're not lying down. And then he had his head like really, really close to the ground, and it was odd. And I was like, something is wrong with my horse. I was like, I'm going to walk round. I was like, I feel like that's the right thing to do. So I got him out and I tried to start walking around the yard, and he just dropped his head right to the floor and was like, I can't walk with you. And I actually thought he might go down on the concrete. So I was like, okay. I was like, put you in the indoor school so at least you're safe. And I
Mm-hmm.
called my coach, Hannah, and I was like, something's wrong with Harley. And she was like, what's he doing? And I said, he's being really weird. And he was like, I've got some videos that I did share on my Instagram, but like, I let him go loose and he went and kind of hid behind the mountain block with his head right down and just stood there like a statue. And then he was trying to, lie down and getting back. And he wasn't lying down, but he was like going backwards and forwards. It was really odd and quite scary. So I asked one of the girls to hold him while I took his temperature, and the thermometer didn't work. So I ran to get a different thermometer. And by the time I'd come back, he'd gone down, was lying down in the school. And then he went flat out with his neck flat down. And, trigger warning for loss. I've It was a really weird moment because as I looked at him flat out, my brain, in films where they get flashbacks, my brain flashed to like seeing Woody, that last moment that I saw Woody after he'd gone. And I sort of lost it a little bit. And thankfully, someone on my yard who is so wonderful, she was walking by because she'd seen me running for this thermometer, so she knew something wasn't quite right. And she just looked at me and she looked at him, and I could see immediately she was like, she knew exactly what happened and what I was, what was happening. And she came in and she was like, he's going to be all right, Rhi. She was like, he's going to be all right. And I'd already called the vet by this point. I was just waiting for them to come. And I took a step away and had a cry and then regathered myself. And then, anyway, by the time the vet came, he was up, his temperature was normal. I'd been walking around for like 40 minutes. He'd started to re-engage a bit. He'd like come out of his stupor and he's like looking at the poles and like, because normally when I'm in the school with him, he like goes over to the poles and he wants to play with them and whatever. And actually, by the time they came, he was fine. We got him looked at anyway. But it was a really scary moment. I think a lot of people think about colicky symptoms as like, oh, they're kicking the belly and they're being really, energy's really up and they look really uncomfortable. And it's not always like that. Actually, if you know your horse, sometimes I think the energy goes the other way and you just know in your gut, like something's not right. So,
Really, really interesting because I don't know if we were still recording. We were still recording. We lost a horse to colic last year.
yes, that lovely
And
mare.
it, yeah, beautiful bee. And it really, she was the aggressive colic that,
Mm.
there was no hints. It was full blown. And the interesting thing was what you've just described was very similar to well, two things. Another friend, they lost a pony, and he was like Harley, like went very, very quiet.
Mm.
Turned out to have really serious stuff going on. Sadly, could not be saved. Um, but then a friend of mine the other day, her horse was displaying really, really bad separation anxiety symptoms, but out of nowhere.
Mm.
Absolutely fine 1 minute, and then like, you know what? No, I'm not fine. Trying to climb over the stable door, spinning, running, absolutely off his tree with seemingly stress. Lunged him, walked him, gave him a bit of settling actually because she thought that he was having like a stress reaction.
Mm.
Um, but this horse has done this number of times, and she's never correlated it with colic. But then he lay down, like Harley, lay down. She came in and
Mm.
she was like, I don't actually think I can look. Like exactly the same as you, has lost a horse, very triggered by the situation, and was very much like, this is really, really sad, like really suddenly, very, very sudden. And it was spasmodic colic, so gas colic, basically.
Yes,
That's
that's what my vet thinks ours
yeah.
was, potentially.
And the way a horse is designed, if ever, and I really actually I want to mention at this point is we would like to have a surgeon come on this podcast
Mm.
this
Yes.
season. We're in the process of reaching out to the right people because I actually think that there's a lot that as horse owners we don't really talk about or that we don't really know about when it comes to how their system actually works. And I saw something at the National Equine Show that Spillers did. They did a whole thing where they like had like a fake intestine and they like showed how long it was. And I really do think, when you understand the insides of a horse and how unbelievably complex it is, how long it is, how easily tangled up or affected and how sensitive they are to that, it makes a lot more sense in these moments that gas can cause a lot of discomfort. And I suppose if we were to talk about silver linings, which I understand is maybe not the easiest thing to do in these situations, but you now know what your horse does when he's in pain.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Great news. Because now you get the opportunity. Oh, he seemed really quiet. Okay, maybe he's actually not feeling 100%. Not necessarily like another thing to worry about because I know how that can be like, oh
Mm-hmm.
God, we always just see worry. We see a problem in our horses because, yes, I do that too. But like, it's good knowledge in some ways that that's how he goes when he's feeling uncomfortable because that other horse would look like he was gonna, break out of the stable and go and meet another horse, whereas Harley
Mm.
just sinks into himself.
Yeah. And to your point around knowing how they look, also knowing how we've talked a little bit about this before, but knowing how you want to respond. Like, not
Hmm.
only did it give me confidence that, like, I know my horse really well, and, every horse is an individual. So, for example, that night, our vet wanted us to keep him in overnight in a shavings stable with no hay, only having like these little mashes every now and again, and that actually made him more stressed than he would have been if he just went out in the field. And because he'd passed droppings, we called the vet again at like 7 p.m. and we were like, I just said to Hannah, my coach, I was like, I just don't think this is better for his body and his system than
Yeah.
the chances of him going on grass at this point. So we called the vet
Yeah.
and she agreed. But it's knowing your horse well enough to be able to even have that conversation rather than standing there and being like, well, the vet said they've got to stay in, but he's absolutely turning himself inside out.
Hmm.
But what I was getting to was, in these moments, colic can evolve really, really quickly into
Yeah.
something incredibly serious. And it's a bit of a debate as to whether or not people choose to have surgery. And I think that's a really, really hard thing when it's your horse and you have to decide, like, do I want to put them through this surgery and everything that comes after, or do I not? And it's worth just trying to have a little think, do a bit of research. I know obviously the odds and stuff are so much better than they used to be, but I also know horses who've had colic surgery and they're just not quite the same
Hmm.
afterwards behaviorally. Yeah.
I I think unfortunately, having now been present twice when a surgeon says, "Would you do surgery?" you will never know until you are there.
Until you're there. Yeah, yeah.
And I wouldn't actually even try. If you are doing that to yourself, Rhi, and you are trying to work it out, just don't. You won't know until the moment, because as well they give you that what they do is they give you percentages based
Oh,
on
okay.
different. So with B, the lovely horse, I know her owner won't mind me discussing this. When we went, she was very, very ill. I've never seen a horse as ill as that, and as violently ill. It was awful. When we went, they take a blood test, and there's two different levels that they look at. I don't know. I'm not going to try and remember what they are. One of them's lactate. I remember that. It's to do with where their body is basically shutting down.
Oh,
And
jeez.
they basically gave her like a between a I think it was like a 10% chance with surgery. And her owner
Mm,
didn't feel like that was fair. So that's how it works. So if God forbid, you end
mm.
up in that situation, you are not just presented with, are you going to do surgery or not? You are given information to help you make that decision.
That is good to
And
know, actually.
and yeah, and the surgeon, then this is what sparked me thinking how interesting it would be to have a surgeon on the podcast, because surgery is of course, like in modern medicine for humans, making leaps and bounds. It doesn't mean that it's where human medicine is, absolutely not. But it is getting a lot better. And what she was talking about is how much higher a percentage chance of improvement you have after surgery now than you used to have. And that is, you know, very helpful, basically, because it means that they can much more confidently give you an idea of how likely your horse is to do well afterwards. I know of horses that have had colic surgery and gone back to jumping Grand Prix.
Wow.
And this is where what Lily said all that time ago,
Mm,
making sure that the people who you rely on for your opinions have got enough relevant experience, because like you said, you've known a few horses that have had colic surgery and haven't been the same afterwards.
mm,
Whereas I know a lot of horses, I do know quite a few horses, not that I've handled personally, but through other people who have had colic surgery and have gone back to do the job that they were doing before and, thriving. So it's such a flexible thing. And I think,
mm.
yeah, although maybe going over it in your head and kind of having an idea of how that could play out is important, I don't think until you're in it you'll be able to make that choice. Because I was
No, I
presented
think
with
that's
it
fair. I think that's
when
fair.
when my old horse, who is still with us, Mo, when she had her foal, something happened when the foal was 5 months old. So she had her foal. Her foal passed away, and her adoptive foal was with her. She was 5 months old. Dee Dee, I'll never forget. And she went really weird one night. She was just like completely like wasn't eating, standing quietly. We were like, this is really odd. Brought her in, put her in a paddock with the foal. It was like, this is really weird. And my vet came at like 10 o'clock at night, and he said, yeah, there is a small percentage this horse has got internal bleeding. And we were like, right. And he knew that because when he did an internal examination, because similar symptoms are supposed to Harley, like quiet, right? When he did an internal examination, she made a noise when he got to the end. Like she made like a sound, like a painful sound. And he said, so when he like met her abdominal wall, I guess, from the inside. And he said, there's just a small chance that she has. And I was like, right, okay, so let's go to the vets. Anyway, she did. But when we got there, they weren't sure whether she had internal bleeding, colic, what was going on. And they said to me at the time, they said, would you do surgery? And I'm there looking at this foal in the eyes, and I'm thinking, would I do surgery? This horse is essentially semi retired. She's had an amazing life. Would I put her through that? Would I put her through that for her foal? I didn't know. I thankfully didn't have to
Mm.
make that decision in the end. Amazing Celia from Rossdale's came in and said, no, this horse has got internal bleeding. That's why this is like this, da 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 da. Gave her this, gave her something. Can't remember. It was an acid, actually, I
But
think, in the
even
blood.
having that person, the right person in that moment, like it makes the difference. Because if you didn't have a
Mm-hmm.
person who dealt with that before, and you are just with not saying normal surgeons, but like every surgeon's got a different specialty based on what they've had to deal
Yeah.
with.
100%.
That I mean that is scary. I hate that. As a control freak, I find that really hard to be
Yeah.
like I've often thought about this for my own mortality. It's so stupid.
Yeah.
But like this idea that there is some knowledge that I won't have that one day could save my life. Like I'm sorry, this is super morbid, but
Mm.
imagine if one day, gosh, I don't want to say this into existence, but let's say for argument's sake that you are in a car crash and your car goes into a lake. And as your
Hmm.
car sinks, you know that there's a piece of information about how to get the door open, but you can't remember what it is. And you're like, another person would get out of this. I think about stuff like this sometimes. And that it really bothers me that in my last moments, I would be like, there is knowledge
I,
that exists right now that could save my life, and I
mm,
don't have it. And that's not a good way to live your life because that is always the case,
mm,
but it
mm,
bothers me.
mm.
Just one more
Wow.
thing to add to your list of anxieties.
We've gone deep fairly early on. I think that's kind of like a bit of a philosophical question, isn't it? Like, it's like
Mm.
a kind of, existential kind of question, which you can't ever really
Yes.
answer, and you have to be okay with if that is, be at peace with that because yeah, and that's the way I believe the world goes. If you have the information, you're meant to survive, and if you don't have the information, you're not.
Mm.
And if you're meant to have the
Yep.
information, you will have it. You will take that. You can trust the universe with that, Rhi. I promise.
You're so
Trust
right.
the universe because I think obviously if it came to like medical negligence, then it's not great. Obviously, if that's why that the end came, but in those moments like the car incident, I think you would find I have trust in you too that you'd find your way
Thanks,
out.
mate.
You said something interesting though, like about control, and
Yeah.
I you know we've gone through this farm renovation thing, and it's
Yes.
been really a very interesting learning experience for so many reasons. And one of them, and I was going to write a newsletter about this because I really think it's important, is I have learned I can't control everything. And
Did you
sometimes, yeah.
did you go into it genuinely feeling that you would be able to control it all? Like, were you like, well, I've planned this and I've planned that? Was it a shock, or is it just that it's been more?
It's kind of been something I've become aware of, and it's probably something I was already doing. Like, you can't control everybody, of course, you can't control everything. But, for example, I'm going to use the end of the arena as an example, right? So we've extended the arena by 20 meters, and in doing that, created a lot of soil and a mess. And if you've been following on YouTube, you will have seen said mess. And it is a mess, like muddy, bad, awful pile of crap, right? And I'm like, I have absolutely gone full circle from, oh my God, I have to control this. I have to do something about it. I've got to fix this. I've got to do something. Da, da, da. It's got to be beautiful. It's got to maximize the turnout space. It's got to do this. It's got to do the other. To okay, there is a really big problem there, and I would handle it. But right now, I cannot do anything about it. I cannot fix it, and so I have to be comfortable with what it looks like. And I've been practicing this a lot, like throughout this whole project, and I've been learning a lot that I am actually incredibly good in difficult situations. And we had a power line come down on yeah, and I won't go into too much detail, but it's been an absolute nightmare. And at one point, 36 homes were without power because of it.
Oh
Yeah.
my God.
My point being is that it was so out of my control, right? 36 homes were without power because of what happened on our property. And it was trees and the way the ground was, and the line was damaged previously and it needed remedy, and then it all went horribly wrong. You guys can fill in the blanks, but that's as much details as you need. The point was, this bad thing happened, right? And I could do nothing other than make sure that the UKPN guys had what they needed, make sure that everybody on site was complying with the safety of it. I've sent my neighbour a bouquet of flowers because they were really put out by the whole situation. We have really like done whatever we could. But what I didn't need to do, which George struggled with more, was getting in a flap. Like George got in a flap. He was like, "This is terrible.
Oh.
What are we gonna do?" Da 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 da. And I was like, "We can do nothing. So we're not going to be stressed about it." And I think that because I've done so much work on my nervous system over the last year, I'm like not unflappable, but I am in a different place to where I was. Um, I say that like I haven't had a panic attack for the first few days when we moved, which I did do, which was pretty hard. The first night here, I lay in bed and I was thinking, how do I get out of the lease? What would I do with all the stables? How can I go back on this? I can't do this. This is too much. Everything is wrong. I shouldn't be here. I'm not capable. You know, that happened. That
Mm.
completely happened.
What do you
Um,
do in that moment? Like when it's that bad, do you like do you wake up George? Do you have a ritual of something you can do? Like what do you do when it's like that? I mean my self-talk can be pretty awful, but I can't imagine having
mm,
signed the lease that you've just signed and being in the middle of that and just having like what do you do with that situation?
well, I'd already been sick that evening. So, like, it had already, like, the thoughts had come, the doubt was there, the feeling of not being safe. I was exhausted as well, like,
Mm.
dog tired from the moving. And literally, I just had to sit with it. That was all I had. You know,
Oh.
I've come a long way. I'm not able to go back on this situation. And I reminded myself of the moments when I knew it was right before this moment. So there were times, there's low all the time when I'm like, this is great. This is going to be the best thing I ever do. This is going to be so much fun. This is going to be an adventure. I'm so in love with the life I want to create with George. All of these
Mm.
things that I just had to sit and remind myself of that. And and then I had therapy the next day. And I spoke to wonderful Bev and we sat with it and she basically said, this is a dysregulated nervous system talking. You are very stressed and what you need to do is just rebuild your capacity is what she talks about. So much like our
Mm.
horses, we need to build nervous system capacity. So doing lots of things, sleeping enough, eating as and when I felt I could, not putting pressure on myself to do anything that felt unsafe, making sure that, you know, when I needed to rest, I could. And it was interesting. So that was on the Wednesday, I had a session with her and I was so tired in our session. She said, I think, maybe you could have a nap. And I couldn't because then we went back to the old house to gather the rest of our things, sort stuff out, whatever. And I came back and literally lay down in the dog bed in the kitchen and I was just like completely comatose. And so I explained this. I do explain this with it visual on YouTube, but if you imagine a like an Easter egg that was
Mm.
split in half horizontally through the middle.
Mm-hmm.
When we are existing in this half of our nervous system, the bottom half, this is when we are like within capacity. So we can swing in between sort of like shutdown, which is over on one side, and then like kind of our peak in the middle and then maybe becoming a bit too heightened on the right side. So our nervous system has like lots of different phases within it. It's not all just one. We're
Mm.
not just like We don't always feel the same. So sometimes we feel really heightened, sometimes we feel kind of closed off. And so we can swing within this like natural arc, is the way I see it. But what was happening to me was I was going up into the top half of the Easter egg, the semicircle above, where I was like really, really heightened at my absolute like crash level up at the top, and then sinking back down into this like almost like vegetable state where,
Mm.
or vegetative state, where I was basically like, my body was like, enough danger, I'm just going to turn you off. And that's what happens. Your body literally just switches all the systems off and you just kind of
Well, it gives up, doesn't
crash.
it? It's yeah,
Mm. And it's
yeah.
protecting you. In doing that, it's protecting you. So going back to like how Harley was experiencing discomfort, his body put him into a kind of a closed off state to be like, just keep yourself safe, just protection, just slow down. Whereas some horses go into like fight flight in those moments.
Mm.
So understanding my nervous system has got to have been the most powerful learning I have had in my whole life.
I love that.
Understanding how we function and how our nervous system keeps us alive, I think is one of the most powerful things we can learn for existing as a human being. And there will be times when you're like, this isn't bloody relevant. Why do I? It doesn't matter. My nervous system isn't dysregulated. But if you can understand it, you can see it in other people. And if you do struggle with regulation, you do struggle with anxiety or depression, which, and I believe those two things are kind of those two sides of the
100%.
nervous system
They're often
spectrum.
quite
You've got
connected. Yeah.
absolutely, you're either anxious or you're depressed, or you can be both. Absolutely,
Mm.
we can handle all of it at once. But if you do struggle with those things, I would highly recommend understanding your nervous system. And I think that's some of what you've done with Nikki, right?
Nikki.
Is
Mm.
understanding what how your system functions.
Yeah, I mean, she talks a lot about some people, me being one of them, who spend a lot of their life in their head. And she was like, often quite sort of academic people do this. They rationalize, they think through, and she's like, you're really interesting in the sense that you understand all of, you can see all of the patterns and whatever
Mm.
whatever. She was like, you just don't take any action. She was like, lots of people don't see the patterns because it's like living with a crack in your wall. After a while you don't see the
Mm.
crack. But there's this audio she has, it's a guided audio called Feel Your Feelings. And
Oh.
oh, I hate it. I mean, I literally hate it, but it is really useful. And it is about like, essentially, you go through this audio and it helps you to detach the feeling from the story that you've been attaching to the feeling. So if something's happened or a conversation's made you really anxious or a worry about something, understanding that the sensation and the story are not the same thing is really valuable. And at the end of this
Mm.
audio, it says, remind yourself, or ask yourself what was worse, the feeling or the story. And of course,
Mm.
always the story is worse. Always, 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 always. And
Yes.
that's always very interesting.
You said a word, and I'm interested by this word, hate, right? I agree because I hate feeling anxious. I hate it, right?
Mm.
But when we hate something, we avoid it, okay? And we push it away. And the reality of it is it's happening to us regardless of whether we hate it or not. Something like
Yeah.
anxiety. And one of the things, my mantra that has helped me a lot over the last couple of weeks, because Bev talks a lot about us all having parts, we're like Russian dolls. And so
It's
our
cool.
different like
It's cute.
different layers or different parts of us all do different things. And there's a part of me, a protector, that shows up a lot, and she is the part that gives me this sinking feeling in my stomach, the anxiety, that like drop, like your gut is reacting. And what we talked about was that I need to love this part, because if I can love her, then I can let her go. I can allow her to be there without trying to force her away, because the harder I force her away, the stronger she comes, because she is there to protect me. So I I say to myself when I have that feeling, I understand that you're here to protect me. I love you for doing that, and you are welcome, but I am safe and life is good.
Mm.
And it is remarkable. Even just having a mantra like that to yourself is like, it just flips the narrative, the story from I hate this feeling, I can't bear this, the reason is this, it's this, da, 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 da. This is just a part of me that is coming to protect
Yeah.
me. And I love her, but I can also let her go. I don't need her right now. We are safe. You know, whatever the
Yeah.
mantra needs to be, that's not very succinct, but you get the
Well,
idea. And it's very powerful.
Nikki talks about this as the dinner party analogy. She's like, if you only invite the good emotions to dinner, the bad ones will just bang on the door until you let them in. And what's really nice about realizing where anxiety comes from, or what it is that quite often it is just like something we've learned in a previous part of our life, sometimes childhood, sometimes not. And it's often just like anxiety disguised as fear or whatever. And once you realize that it's a younger part of yourself, whether they're a child or not, it's so much easier to be like, thank you for showing up and thinking of me. I am here to protect us both because we made it through that thing that really worried you, and we're going to make it through this thing. And you being able, in my mind, it's really helpful to think of that as a child in a way, or my
Mm,
childish self, because I'm
mm.
able to be like, I've got us. You're all right. But it takes time to get there. So yeah,
Yeah, for sure. And that's interesting. Have you always had that mindset?
no, it's mostly been through some of the work with Nikki. I wasn't able to sort of unpick some of that before and realize where certain things were coming from. So it took a bit of work, and it wasn't very fun, but yeah,
The differentiation, I think, is the key, isn't it? The kind
yeah.
of like the segmenting it, being like, oh yeah, that's a part of me that was developed at this point. And one of the things I find very helpful is to understand where things come from for me, like what was the thing that created that part of me. I do find that helpful, and it sounds like maybe you don't find it that helpful or want or that comfortable to go back and be like, why is this? I wonder
No,
where this came from.
well, no, I think it's interesting, but I know that Nikki talks specifically about not needing to know where something comes from because some people don't know and they can't find it, and that shouldn't be a blocker to
100%.
moving past it. You know what I mean? So
Absolutely.
it's less that than just me realizing you don't have to know in order to
Mm,
whatever.
yeah,
But
100%.
yeah, yeah.
Ah, yeah, interesting. Journey of life. I think I talk to people about that a lot at the moment. You know, it's not always meant to be comfortable, actually, life. Like, that's
Mm.
not what makes it colourful or. And obviously, yeah, of course, you know, I meet some people and I think, goodness, I can't believe the luck you have, or I can't believe that you know, have had so many hard things happen. And I can't quite understand how that kind of those sort of situations manifest. But yeah, life is about the experience. You know, life is about an experience. You know, and experiences aren't always just wonderful.
Well, on that note, I'd be really, really interested to hear if people have been through this themselves, especially as horse people who often prioritize their horses over other things. So I've had such an interesting 4 months between our last podcast and this one, where opportunities have arisen that have really put a metaphorical crossroads in front of my self, in front of my
Mm.
path. There we go. Where, and it's really made me realize that things that I valued highly, highly, highly when I was 25 or 23 or whatever, and now being 32 are very different. And actually recalibrating that and being like, oh, you actually don't want the thing that you wanted then. But you almost, so there was a couple of opportunities that arose, and my knee-jerk reaction was like, oh my god, yeah, perfect, great. And then actually when I started digging into what it meant to take that opportunity or do that thing, I was like, oh wait, but I would have to give up this and that would have to change and this would have to go and da 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 da. And I'm being deliberately obtuse, but if you, there's a really lovely exercise you can do called the wheel of life, and it basically is like 10 concentric circles, so circles within one another, and on each point you have like family, relationships, work, hobbies, money, other things that are important to you, and you chart 1 to 10, where that is in your life. Like how good is it, basically? How much time are you able to put to it, or how important is it to you? And you can chart where you were like 2 years ago, 5 years ago, where you are now, where you'd like to be in the future, or where you would be if you did whatever this big decision is. And it's a really interesting exercise to be like, what do I value now? What did I value then? And I've just been really enjoying it. I'm in a really interesting place in my life where, specifically for me, my career has been always absolutely at the top, at the detriment to almost everything, actually. And for a while, I was completely fine with that. But in the last few years, I've actually got to a point where I'm like, actually, I'm not willing to do it at the detriment of everything else, to the level that I was. And it's been a really interesting thing because I found myself being really like intrigued by education, and I always think about going back and doing literature masters and blah blah blah. And I found Yale do these, they have a couple of courses that they just publish, like whole modules. So I'm currently like watching, there's like 26 lectures in the theory of literature from like, they're like 15 years old, but I like watch one every day. And I know this sounds like, for some people this will be an absolute nightmare, but it fills me with so much joy. And there's a second one in American literature that I'm going to do next. And I'm just like, I would have never thought to spend time on this before, because I'd have been like, well, no, you must be focusing on this and this. And I'm like, you can live your life differently. And I love that, you know?
Mm. Mm. Good for you. Does sound like a nightmare to me. English literature was literally my least favourite subject at school, because writing an essay didn't fill me with joy. But that's okay. And that's why we're friends, because the yin and the yang always need to find each other. And I think that that is how
Mm.
often relationships work. You know, they say opposites attract. And I do believe that in a lot of ways. You know, a
100%.
tidy person meets a messy person.
Yeah.
You know, outdoorsy person meets an indoorsy person, and then they combine, and then you realize that actually, anyway, you get my drift.
I have a question for you on that, actually. When you think about your life now versus your life at the farm, as in future tense
Mm,
farm, because I know you're sort of there, but you're 1 foot in, 1 foot out because the horses aren't
mm.
there yet. Are there parts of your life that you've been like waiting to prioritize more, or like things that you wanted to do less of in the new place?
Yeah, rushing.
Yeah.
It's not what I'm doing. I've been doing what I want to be doing for years, but the way that I'm doing it, I haven't been able to do it.
Mm.
I got up yesterday, and we don't have any curtains at the moment, so we just get up with the sun, literally, and
That's
it's
very
lovely.
Dutch. I feel like I read an article years ago, this is just a small aside, about middle class and upper middle class
Mm,
houses and how they don't have curtains, or they have their curtains open in the evening, because it's a
hmm
display of both wealth and also security. And so every time I go into in like Amsterdam or something where you see these open curtains, apparently that's
mm.
what it's meant to display. Anyway,
Oh, really?
that's not what you were doing. Yeah.
No, I just don't have any curtains. Um, and what I did was I woke up, and like George made me this really delicious cup of coffee with the coffee machine that he has wanted for ages. And then I had a
Oh,
hot cross bun, and I just sat on the worktop and I ate my hot cross bun and I drank my cup of coffee, and then I went out and I did what I needed to do, and it just felt different. Like it just feels like I'm in a different kind of position. And you know, this is the most money I've ever spent doing this. And I
of
don't want
course.
people to think I'm like rich, because I'm just not. Like, that's not, I've borrowed money to be able to do this, and I'm going to have to pay that money back.
But even
Yeah.
if you were, it would
Yeah.
be perfectly okay for you to spend
Okay.
this money on this thing that you do and your business. And I know that you're not, and I know that you've worked very hard to get where you are,
Mm,
but we both know people who have got money
mm,
that they've done similar things with, and like I feel like that's fine too,
mm.
because you're doing something, you're building an incredible, life.
Life, right? I want to live my life. I want to
Hmm.
like enjoy it and feel like safe within it. And one of the things that we've really noticed is, um, when we moved out of the old house, I don't know how we lived there for so long. Like, it was very small and dark. And when I said to my friend yesterday, I said, "Oh, it's the spring equinox. We're moving the horses. It feels like the timing is so universally aligned, everything just feels right. But we were meant to move last week, couldn't, certain things hadn't happened, blah, blah, blah. And she said, yeah, we are stepping out of the dark and into the light. Like that is the story of the equinox. And that's what it feels like in so many areas of my life. And so, yeah, the things that I want to do that are different is I want to feel like gentle
Mm.
and slow. And I do think everybody can get to that. Like, even if you are a very busy person and you work incredibly hard, if we can create moments or create space in our life somehow to have that slowness, those moments of just a pause, then we can start to feel much less resistant of everything, I,
Mm.
I don't know. I'll keep you posted on that. But yeah, I'm just noticing these kind of quieter bits in my life.
Yeah.
I I have lived with a dysregulated nervous system my whole life. Ever since I came out of the womb, I was a dysregulated child. I was a dysregulated teenager, 20 year older, 30-year older, and I think I'm only just starting to step into what will feel like comfort and
Love
safety.
that. I love that.
Mm.
I think also it is that time of year where, and I always feel quite guilty for doing it, but I've really covered covered the life that I'm sure you get hear this a lot over the summer. I really covet the life of people I know who work on yards or who like work with horses in some way, and I'm like, oh, it's just the best job ever. And of course it is from April to September.
Mm.
But yeah, oh, sometimes I just get to the yard and I'm like, what a life, you know?
Yeah.
But I'm coming to visit you next week, and I just can't wait. I love seeing the farm. It's going to be the best day. I've been like waiting. I've got half a day that I need to use before the end of March. It's like carryover from last year, and I was just like, how do I use this half a day? I want to be intentional with how I use it. So I was like going through all these options, and I was like, oh my god, Miri, I'm gonna go and visit Miri and the farm, and all the horses will be in by then. So like, can you talk us through the action plan on Monday, or is I going to give you a panic attack?
Um, well, it's Monday or Tuesday, but it has to be Monday or Tuesday because if it isn't Monday or Tuesday, then the guy from Old Manor Farm, Mark, my friend Mark, is going to be coming over on Wednesday to pick up all of the rubber matting, all of the bedding, all of the hay, all of the big stuff. So if we haven't moved the horses, we are going to have a problem. You look
So
confused.
you're, I am confused. Well, I'm not confused, but I'm a little bit confused. You've got new rubber matting in your new place. Are you keeping
We
your old rubber matting to put in something else in the barns or something? Or
well, I may sell some,
oh,
but
fine,
I'm just not leaving it behind. And I have got
fair.
3 more stables and the big pen that we will set up at some point in one of the barns, but I can't afford to do that at the moment. The money has run out. And yes, I've just got to be sensible about where I'm spending my money. But yeah, no, we're just going to be, moving the horses into the new place and then moving everything out of the old place, jet washing everything, getting everything clear. So you might be put to work next Friday, to be honest.
Oh, I
I
love
don't
it.
think
Do
I,
no, I truly love it. When I go home and see my best friends who both work with horses, and they're like, "Do you want to help me muck out?" I'm like, "Yes, please. I would love that." But also, and I know I shouldn't be trivial about it, but Miri's situation reminds me so much of Pippa Funnel, the Stud Farm Inheritance, the game. Because if you've ever played that game as a kid, you have to like do stuff. You have to like do challenges to unlock things. So like, sorry, when she first inherits the stud farm, like the stables are broken down and the barn doesn't work, and like she can't access certain buildings because like they're all old and like broken down. So she has to do challenges like collecting the sheep on horseback, and then she has the money to like build the barn. So if you wanna
oh,
play the Miri Hackett's not Stud Farm Inheritance, if you watch her YouTube videos, she might get enough money to build the barn. Sorry, it's not funny, but in my mind
but
it
it
is a little bit.
also is actually true. Really, truly is. If you want to see me be able to do the things I plan to do, if you could subscribe to my Patreon and listen to this podcast and maybe watch my YouTube videos, that would be great. I tell you where I would really like to go viral is TikTok. Never
Why
happens.
is it good? Oh, I see. Okay. Well, I mean,
Oh, yeah.
going viral in TikTok is a blessing and a curse because one, the money isn't as good as YouTube. As someone who works in the industry, the percentages are higher on your YouTube channel than they will be on your TikTok. Free tidbit of advice. But secondly, I feel like going viral on TikTok, you go beyond the industry, and then the
Mm.
comments get a bit weird.
Oh
You
yeah.
know?
I had a viral video go I had a video go viral the other day and it didn't tip into hell, you know? Didn't
Oh,
tip
what
over
was
the
it?
edge. It was that video about waiting for 13 seconds for your horse to process things.
I saw that one ticking up, and I was like, interesting. Yeah, the big
Mm.
black horse, and he was thinking about the
Yeah, he's
something
bay actually. He's
trailer.
bay.
Oh, sorry.
He looked a bit. Yeah, there was just something going on at the top of the drive, and he stopped and paused, and so I thought, I want to talk about this. So I took a video of him, and after about 10 seconds, he did a big lick and a chew, and then I just asked him to keep walking after about 13 seconds, and he started walking again. And again, it's that regulation piece that, like, if you give your horse a chance to process the thing they need to see, that they can see, they quite often will process it and then carry on going. Whereas if as soon as your horse stops to look and you go, get on with it, all you do is create a distrust in them, in you, basically.
I love it.
So,
Speaking of, it's not quite the same, but speaking of
mm-hmm.
helping horses to make decisions and stuff, I've been
Mm-hmm.
using positive reinforcement to help Harley with his fly mask. And I've
Mm.
wanted to do this for ages. So I learned about positive reinforcement on a course in the USA. I was invited out to Santa Fe to learn all about positive reinforcement, and it was a really thorough course actually. And it was like some in classroom, some with the horses, and so I learned how to help Harley understand that the clicker means this and the treat means that and blah blah blah. And Harley does not enjoy having his fly mask on, but he has a very pink nose and he has plaques in his ears, so he has to wear one because otherwise he gets blistered nose and we worry about his ears. And so unfortunately for us, a lot of the team who work on the yard are quite petite. And when Harley doesn't want his fly mask on, he puts his head right up in the air like a giraffe and will just stay there. Like, I really don't want it on. And so what
Mm.
ends up happening is the team either has to wait for him to put his head down or they have to try and get into a wrestling match, which is not fun for anyone and also not very nice. So I've been teaching him to let me put the fly mask on gently. So it started out with just can you touch the fly mask? Then it was, can you touch the fly mask and keep your head there? Then it was, can I put it over your eyes? Then it was, can I put it over your eyes and move it up a bit and down a bit? And now, just this morning, I put ears on, put the back up, and he was like, this is totally fine. Did make me laugh because Miri did message me halfway through and was like, I was using so shady. I was using an old fly mask because it's just like the one that was in my boot. He's got a brand new one. I've been sharing videos on my stories, and Miri was like, I'm not surprised he doesn't want to put it on. She was like, you know that I feel like this is a moment where I should tell you that you can let things go. Like, this fly mask is so dirty and gross. And I was like, she has a fair point. It's a fair. I was like, I've got a new one. So anyway, I used the new one today. And
And
again,
he let her put it
correlation
on
is
third
not
time. It
causation.
is. It is.
But
He just decided the other one is so revolting. He's like, I'm not wearing that horrible old thing, mother. I've put a clean one on and I will wear it. No bother. First time, straight on. Turns out it just
oh, bless him.
stinks. Have you ever
Bless
put it in the
him.
washing machine?
No. No. I don't
You
no,
could.
I don't put things in the washing machine.
Yeah,
I
you
hand wash all
should.
my boots and stuff. Although there's some public washing machines at some supermarkets near me that I took my Equitexes to before. I had some Equitexes I sold because they had logos on and I changed brands and whatever. And I took them to this laundrette and it was like a public outdoor one. It was great.
Oh wow,
Um,
outdoors, so no one can tell you're turning up with your stinky old horsefly
I
mask.
know. Well, I did, give them a good brush, but I don't think I'd put my boots in there.
I'm only joking. You're allowed. I
Oh,
see people doing that all the time, turning up to laundrettes and waiting for other people to leave before they start
yeah.
washing things. I mean, at the end of the day, it's being washed. It's not like people are putting their clothes in with it dirty in a tumble dryer together, you know? Like
Yeah,
the
but
washing
I
machine.
think I think there was an article about this somewhere in some part of the country because people have been putting like rugs in there, and like
Mm.
obviously the washing machine can only get so clean after a cycle. So like if you're the next person, then that's not great. Which is why I do draw the line a bit. I put like clean stuff in it that just needs an actual wash.
Mm.
But there are a lot of them
You,
now with super. There's like a lot of supermarket chains that have outdoor, outside laundrettes and stuff. So yeah. Anyway,
you've just reminded me that that's another job that we need to do is remove the washing machine from one place and plumb it back in here.
oh, that's not a fun job.
Oh, the list of
Do you
jobs.
have to?
The
Can
list
you
of
do that
jobs.
yourself?
Yeah, yeah,
Oh.
absolutely. You just plug a
Although
washing machine in.
you have an abundance of like very handy family because
Yeah.
your mum, your dad, George's family, your
Mm.
friends, they're all like builders or plasterers or, scientists come tack room builders,
Yeah,
they've all got many
no,
skills.
my parents have been the foundations to this project. Like, I couldn't have done half of it without them. Like, it would not be going to end up as beautiful as it's going to end up. And yeah, I'm incredibly grateful to them. Like,
You saw them retire and you're like, I'll have a bit of that.
yeah,
Come on.
move in. Come on,
Work, you say?
free labor. Yeah.
They're
My
very
mum
cute.
does say, she's like, what else would we be doing?
Yeah.
They go off and they do their own thing. Like they walk on a Wednesday in London. They do this like walking group thing, and they have an allotment, and they see my brother and my nephews and all sorts of things like that. So like they are, living a good life, but they are working hard at the moment. So I do make sure I care for them as best I possibly can. And
It's very
I'm
good.
thinking, we've got the fencing guys here today. They finished the arena today, which is so exciting, unbelievable. I don't think I've really processed what that's going to feel like. Like, I think I'm probably going to cry when I ride on it for the first time.
100%. I even think the first day that you wake up and all the horses are there, that's
Mm,
just like from house to home, isn't it? I feel like that's quite a
mm.
big thing.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
don't know what that's going to feel like. And it's interesting because the house is like slightly above the yard, so you can really see everything. And I do find myself like going to bed at night going like, what can I see? What's going on? Da 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 like, and I worry a bit about that, like how that's gonna be, because
As in like worrying about the horses and like the security and stuff.
no, just like never switching off.
Mm.
Never being like, okay, now I'm home, you know? But
Yeah,
I've
yeah,
lived
yeah.
very detached from the yard for such a long time, not being near, not being able to just pop in, having to
I
drive
don't know,
there.
Miri. I mean, you say that, but I don't know. Not to like say it's not a worry you should worry about, but like you're never. You say you're not geographically close to the yard, but mentally, you never switch off from thinking about the horses. Like you're always
Mm.
thinking like someone might call and say something's wrong or something, or I might just pop back and take the fly masks off or da da da. The only difference is going to
Yeah,
be that you're going to have like it's going to be so much easier to do that. So
yeah. No, and you're right
yeah,
actually, because I'm hopeful that because everything is in one place, I'm going to be able to relax more because I can just
exactly.
kind of quietly oversee things from a distance rather than being like setting people up to do something. Then they call me up and be like, Zora jumped on my head today because the wind blew, which has happened a lot recently. And so, I had a conversation with a prospective livery today, and um, we were talking about how livery yards are fine until they're not, because
Mm,
horses are fine unless they suddenly don't fit. Like they need box rest and they don't cope. They are dysregulated by pain or the wrong training or whatever it might be. Pain, I think, probably is the thing that dysregulates horses the most. And what we were talking about was how different this setup is, because although we have liveries and people can come and do things with their horses at their leisure as such, only certain horses after a certain period of time, but we do control everything, right? And that can sound
mm.
a bit like, oh God, you control freak. But when you have difficult horses that need specialist care that are in rehab, you have to, because what you can't have is somebody dropping in to come and hand walk their horse, for example, and I'm riding another horse or teaching a lesson, and then that horse can't actually get what it needs at that moment in its very fragile state. So then it doesn't make any progress and it's back to being injured again.
Honestly, I totally agree. I think obviously your setup is more specialised than where I am, but the fact that everyone is on full livery makes such a
Mm.
difference. And even
Yes.
beyond that, there is a barn on our yard, top barn, where horses are who are on like not competition livery, but like ridden livery basically. And
Mm.
Hannah is very specific about the hours. Like she doesn't let people in that barn in the evening because she's like, those horses have the team coming in and out all day, in and out, in and out, in and out. She was like, in the evening and then the night, no one. They get
Mm.
time to rest. And if you're not on, ridden livery and you need to be able to access your horse in the evening, you're just not in that barn. But I think even stuff like that is so thoughtful, and like
Mm.
what time she allows liveries up in the morning. Like I remember I read somewhere that some DIY and a full livery person were going back and forth because the DIY was like, well, I want to be able to come into the yard whenever I want. It's my horse and I don't feel safe if I can't do that. And it's like, yeah, okay, I understand. But I mean, within reason, like when a horse is on full livery, that team is then responsible for like checking them all first thing, making sure they've all been fed. Like they will call you if something's wrong. And if everyone's just coming on the yard really, really early, then those horses
Mm.
never get a moment to kind of like eat their breakfast in peace. And I think all of that is really important, actually.
But and the reason it's important is because if you think about how horses would live in the wild, is they would all do everything at the same time together.
Mm-hmm.
They'd the water, they'd all move from here to there. So then if one horse is being fed and another horse isn't being fed, that is just the worst thing you can do for horses. And people are like, oh, do horses thrive on routine or don't they? And the reality is they don't. It's not so much the routine, so it's not like, okay, they have to be turned out at this time and brought in at that time. The reality is if their needs are met as a group, they will
Yes.
be happy.
Yeah. 100%. It's so funny you realize how much they move in fluidity together. I obviously Harley normally goes out after I've left the yard. I normally see him in the middle of the day. And the other day, I ended up being able to get down there early, and he was tied up on the yard, almost ready to go out to the field. And I was like, I'm here. I was like, I'll just give him a quick brush and whatever, and then I'll turn him out. And all of his herd mates came
Mm.
onto the yard and then went off the yard without him. And he was like, he then got quite up for a couple of minutes and was like, "Well, why aren't I going? I'm normally with them." And da, da, da. And I was like, "Oh," I was like,
Mm.
"Sorry, I've disrupted it." And I think had he not seen them, to your point, he doesn't know
Mm.
what time it is.
Mm.
But it was right, quite an interesting sort of moment.
And like we are setting things up so that we can, like, the way we've divided our fields up is different to like normal, I suppose, because we've got like three big fields and we've divided them all up into three. One of them's into two actually, but it means that there are no like horses. The way we've divided it up is more like a fan shape than
Mm.
like a hot cross bun. Does that make sense? Imagery
Yeah.
wise?
Wait.
No.
They're like
Yes.
slices of pizza.
Like slices of pizza.
Okay.
Yes.
And
With a
how?
gap.
And what's? Yeah. Go
And then
on.
a hot cross bun would be you'd have like a partition down the middle, but you would have fields that would be horizontally broken up. Don't worry. This is going to have to be an image for social media and YouTube and stuff. But
Go on.
it's, yeah, instead of a pizza, it would be like if you chopped a pizza into quarters,
Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah.
have
Yeah.
a walkway down your quarters. But what you do in doing
Oh, so they're all separate, basically. They're
that,
like,
exactly, they're not going to be like that. The pizza slices are, no, the fan is the right thing because you've got a central point. Anyway,
oh,
the point is, the way we've set things up is so that like a horse is never left on its own where it can't bring itself up to that main gateway. It's they're always going to be
oh.
able to kind of bring themselves back to that central point. We've got loafing areas in all three fields, so we've got basically an equicentral system, which is what we spoke to Jane and
That's cool.
Jane
And have you
about.
done that with like, have you got hard standing or have you got like, what's it called, gel mats, or like, how does it work?
Yeah, not yet. We will have hard standing and or mud mats, depending on what makes most sense in each area. One of the areas is the area that has been completely destroyed by the arena creation. So in some ways, it's going to be easier for us to turn it into hard standing, like because it's mud, basically. But some of the other areas are at the moment grass. But we're just see how we go. We're moving into the best time of year for all of this kind of thing. We don't need to do something right now. It's not like we're moving the horses in the middle of December. And once again, universally, this is how it's worked out. You know, we were meant to move sooner and we haven't been able to. So here we are.
Love it.
Everything happens for a reason. So yeah, it's really cool.
Mm.
We've got a really cool season coming up for you guys. We're going to be back now every week to bring you a slice of our life. Can't believe I just said that. But also have some really cool guests. We have got some very cool conversations coming up. I'm not going to spoil them in also because things change and sometimes people can't make it when they say that they can. But yeah, we're really excited for this season and we are really hoping that you join us for the next, I don't know,
10
conversation.
weeks.
Yeah.
So, as per usual, every Wednesday at 6 a.m. UK time is when the podcasts go live on all of your platforms. We are also on Instagram. I'm at Riding with Rhi. Miri is at Miri Hackett. We also have This Equestrian Life podcast, so it's its own thing. And we always obviously publish this in audio, but we put clips on the Instagram so you can see things in a more visual way. Maybe one day we'll stick the whole thing on YouTube, but right now that feels like an extra job that perhaps it's not for this season. I think it'll break Miri if we add that to the farm.
Potentially. Let's see how we go. I'd love to do that. I
Yeah.
think it's hard because we record this virtually. We're not together. It does make that little bit more difficult. But no, I've got better internet this time, so at least Rhi can see me not in pixelated hell.
It is lovely. And you've got lovely beams behind you. It's very farmhousey.
It's so farmhousey. It really is a farmhouse. It's wonderful. And it feels lovely and safe. It doesn't feel at all haunted, which is great. So
That is good. I look forward to giving it my own radar test because I'm a bit weird about houses. I don't know if I should tell you though if I feel weird, if I feel strange.
It's okay.
Maybe I shouldn't.
We can welcome the ghosts.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'll let you know.
Yeah. Thanks. Oh, well, thank you so much for listening, guys. It's great to be back, and we will see you for next week. Bye for now.
See you next week. Bye.